Stay tuned.
All right, we're just going to move on here with a local farmer. Joel Hughesby is a fourth-generation farmer in Walla Walla. His 400-acre farm has been certified organic since 2004. It was the second farm, I'm told, that was rescued by the PCC Farmland Trust. It means that that land was saved to grow non-GMO food. His crops include organic pumpkins, butternut squash, organic alfalfa, hay, barley for Organic Valley, one of the sponsors of this GMO Free Rally. He's going to talk about how GMO alfalfa, however, is contaminating his organic alfalfa. If anyone wants to get in touch with him after this, please email info@gmofreeseattle.com. Joel Hughesby, a loud welcome.
Thank you so much. You know, I come from the land, and I offer my hands as evidence as such. So it's great to be here and share a little bit of my story with you and how GMO Roundup Ready alfalfa has an impact on my farm. The fact of the matter is, GMO alfalfa was released for complete deregulation by the Obama administration and Secretary of Agriculture Tom Vilsack in January of this year. Okay, this is not a good thing, right? I grow alfalfa. In fact, I was even growing some organic alfalfa seed this year. But the fact of the matter is, I can't really do that anymore, and because it's already too late in my valley. And the reason is cross-pollination. Unlike corn and some of these other crops, alfalfa is pollinated by bees, and those bees can travel 5 miles from where their hives are or their bee boxes to the crops. They don't recognize fence lines, they don't recognize property lines. Now the fact is, there's an industry-imposed buffer zone between the GMO alfalfa that's in my valley and my fields, so they say. But that's not going to stop the bees or the wind or anything like that from taking that and that altered genetics onto my organic fields. I can't grow alfalfa organically in my valley anymore. And alfalfa seed is a really big cash crop in the Tushi Valley in Walla Walla. Okay? The second thing, I was just talking to a seed buyer the other day about this. He says, Joel, even if that wasn't an issue, the problem is you cannot clean the harvesting equipment, you will not clean the seed cleaning equipment enough at the seed plants to ensure that there's no GMO seed from the non-GMO fields. It's already there. It's a done deal for me. I can't do it. That's kind of bad news, isn't it? You know? All right. Well, there's other problems with this, and that's the fact that there's already a lot of resistance to glyphosate. Glyphosate is the chemical Roundup. Right now, there's already 10 weeds in the United States and 22 states that have shown significant resistance to glyphosate. These are economically important weeds because they take down yields. All right. I was just talking down the road the other day to a friend of mine, borrowed his manure spreader because I was putting in some spinach, and he says, you know, it was only a few years ago that 6 to 8 ounces of Roundup would take care of those weeds. He says today it's 40 to 50 ounces per acre. So when the chemical companies talk about the fact that you now use less chemicals because we're using these GMO crops and everything like that, it's not the case. We have to apply more and more chemicals now that there's more and more resistance. That's more and more dumped into the environment. That's the wrong thing. So we're losing tools that would have been available to us earlier. Those things are going now. One of the big things that the seed companies tout now is that, well, you know, this is how we feed the planet. The news this last week, 7 billion people. But the fact is, the GE crops don't show any evidence that they increase food production. What they've done is created corporate dependency. Okay? Because the same company that sells you the damn seed sells you the chemical to do it. And I will not be a serf to those companies. Life will find a way. For me, I'll have to grow something besides alfalfa at some point here in a not too distant future because I will not lose my organic status. And I'm going to grow crops, particularly like for my livestock, pastures and things, clover, other things that are not already adulterated by Monsanto, DuPont, and the like. So, where does it begin? It begins with farmers like me on the land, and it begins with eaters like you making choices to know people like me. You know your doctor? Do you know your farmer? Joel Huseby, glad to meet you.
I want to take a moment before we end the rally to further recognize some of the heroes before you, starting with Phil. Phil has a job of going to international conferences and protecting everyone here. He goes to the Codex, he goes to the Cartagena Protocol, and he gets into the wording. And the wording to make sure that the biotech industry and the president and others can't use Codex laws to railroad and hurt us. So this man has been working on our behalf in the minutia. I mean the minutia. Let's give him a hand, man. Let's give him a hand. This guy, I mean, I show up at Bonn, Germany, or in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, and there he is, surrounded by a room of people from NGOs all over the world, and he's saying, okay, so what's the next sentence? And he's running the show, and he lives here, and he's your neighbor, and he's working for you. So thank you, Phil.
Phil Bereano. He was a professor of technical communication and women's studies, American ethnic studies. He's a recognized expert on the ethical and social considerations of technologies, especially genetic engineering, including helping to define the idea of genetic discrimination and privacy. He's also been an outspoken defender of civil liberties with respect to information technologies. He received the William O. Douglas Award from the ACLU here in Washington State for sustained contributions to the cause of civil liberties. Please join me in welcoming Phil Bereano.
Thank you. 12 years ago, you would have seen lots of people and you would have seen lots of signs. If you were here, you would have seen signs about Teamsters and turtles. Remember that one? A lot of the signs said no patenting on life, no patents on life. And those of us who have been involved in issues around genetic engineering were really, really amazed and pleased to see that, because an issue which seems to be like just something for techno-wonks to deal with had reached lots and lots of people. And people understood, were beginning to understand that issues of labeling GMOs, issues of patenting GE, and all those issues are exactly a manifestation of what Occupy Seattle and Occupy Wall Street and all the other occupations are. Our friend who came up here earlier when Les was talking and was agitated about the relevance of what we are focusing on today, because he didn't feel that it related to the severe problems and issues that were on his mind. We need to carefully explain to him and to everyone that the issues around GMOs are as good an illustration about how the 1% screws over the 99% as any other issue. In the 1980s, Syngenta, in a survey of American consumers, found that 93% of American consumers wanted GE foods to be labeled. Why aren't GE foods labeled when 93% want it? It's for the same reason that we don't have single-payer health care, even though huge majorities want it. For the same reason that we don't have other sensible programs, because it's not a majority rules situation. We need to understand that. We also need to understand that the glass is, in fact, half full. I appreciate the speakers who went before me who talked about the glass being half empty. I'm not a Pollyanna, but you need to also understand, we need to understand, I need to every day remind myself of how incredibly successful the worldwide movement against genetic engineering has been. No other technology at its outset has been opposed so regularly, so systemically, by so many people all around the globe. Nuclear power was out of the box and established. There were hundreds and hundreds of nuclear power plants before the movement got going strongly. Nuclear weapons were an existing reality in arsenals all around the world before the anti-nuclear weapon movement got going. But the GE movement, the movement around genetic engineering, got going early, and we have stopped them. There is no GE wheat currently, not because they didn't want it, but because we didn't want it. And I could give you other illustrations. Currently, a tiny, 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 tiny sliver of farms, if you look at all the farms in the world, a tiny, tiny fraction grow genetically engineered crops. We need to remember that the overwhelming majority of food crops that are grown are not genetically engineered. And it's not because what Monsanto wants, it's because of what farmers in Zambia want. It's because of what consumers in Germany want. It's because of what a network of people in Latin America want. And finally, America is waking up and wanting it too. We do live in the belly of the beast. We live in the country that developed this technology and that pushes it. A white paper of the Clinton administration said that genetic engineering was the next bedrock technology that would move this country forward just the way the railroads did, and then the automobile did, and then the televisions did, and the computer did, that GE would be the next technology, and that nothing could be put in the way. Nothing could be put in the way to send negative signals to the investment capitalists about genetic engineering. That's why we can't have labeling, because labeling will send genetic signals. Because, just to use one of the quotes I was going to use, okay, Jose Fernandez, the State Department's Assistant Secretary for Economic, Energy, and Business Affairs, not for consumer affairs, but for economic, energy, and business affairs, said that labeling of GE foods would scare consumers away from those foods. Oh, wow. Yes, because he knows that, as Jeffrey mentioned and others, an overwhelming majority of people want GE foods labeled so that they can avoid buying them. Right. So much for letting the market govern, right? No, no, no. The market is only for when they get the advantages of the market. When we get the advantage of the market doesn't govern. We're not allowed to label, because Fernandez says, quote, if you label something, there's an implication there's something wrong with it. Whoa. He spoke at a panel organized by CropLife International. the group that represents Monsanto, DuPont, and other biotech firms. Yes, there's an implication. Now, of course, they say, the FDA formally says, you shouldn't label GE foods because they are substantially equivalent to non-GE foods. And then when the companies leave the FDA office building, they go across the street to the patent office and say, give us a patent monopoly on this food because it's substantially different. It's different. Now, how is this magic occur? This is the magic of modern capitalism, that something can simultaneously be substantially the same and substantially different at the same time. Okay. In addition, of course, the biotech industry, which clearly is in the 1%, not in the 99%, spent over $1 billion lobbying Congress since 1999. That might have something to do with why we don't have genetically engineered foods labeled. $1 billion. Over 175 countries have joined together in an international treaty called the Cartagena Protocol to regulate genetically engineered organisms when they move from country to country. The U.S. is not one of those 175. Why? Because people might be concerned that there'd be something to be afraid of, right? And it's not good for the business of making and pushing GE. One further, I'll just wind up with a story which illustrates the wisdom in the remarks that the farmer who preceded me just made. In 2002 in Johannesburg, South Africa, I was asked to debate an officer of the USAID program named Emmy Simons on national TV in South Africa about genetic engineering. And as you might imagine, the debate got pretty heated, so that when the half hour ran out and the cameras stopped rolling, we were still going. And after the cameras were off, she looked at me and virtually wagged her finger at me, and she said, before long, we will have introduced enough genetically engineered crops into South Africa that the whole continent will be contaminated, and then you won't be able to do anything. And that's what it's all about, ladies and gentlemen. It's about contamination and waste and a lack of democratic control. We need to organize to make sure that this technology is under democratic control, under the control of the 99% and not the 1%. Thank you.
I want to take a moment to further recognize some of the heroes before you. And I want to talk about Goldie, man. This woman is working to educate all of us and to keep us healthy. When companies like Monsanto want to give us all the wrong information, she comes and says, no, don't pay attention to them. They're lying to you. Pay attention to the truth. So thank you for teaching us and keeping us honest and aware of what's going on. Thank you so much. Fantastic. I'm not giving this up yet. And Joel, he represents all of our farmers. Let's give Joel and the farmers a huge hand. Oh, baby. We need to protect them. We need to love them. We need to hug them. We need to hold our farmers close to us and not let Monsanto take over our lands. I want to talk about Les over here. Les is a physician, you know, and like, he's really a born-again GMO activist now. He's like texting me at 1 in the morning, at 3 in the morning, and like working all of his life now in terms of he's got it. He realizes, you know, people think, oh yeah, GMOs, yeah, you know, we're going to die anyway, and there's pesticides. When you realize what GMOs are, they're a takeover. I mean, Kissinger said, if you want to control a country, control the oil. If you want to control people, control the food. And Vandana Shiva says, if you want to control the food, control the seed. This is the biggest gamble of our lives and our earth. They want to eliminate seed saving in the 1.4 billion farmers so that every farmer on earth buys the limited genetics available in the catalogs at a time of global climate change. It's the diversity that is our protection. They are willing to risk the entire food security for their profits. So Les is like waking up and going, oh my God, this is the issue. And he hasn't stopped working. And he's like, he is now creating an organization so everyone who wants to be involved can just go over, sign in, and plug in and do really important work. So thank you, Les. Now I want to give you an excuse. I want to give you an excuse to do a little bit of work on GMOs. Just a little bit of work. Now, a little bit of work may be a click and send revolution. You may just want to take stuff, put it on your Facebook, put it in your email. How many people have a Facebook? Raise your hand. How many people have an email address book? How many people know anyone else? All right? Now, most Americans, 95% of Americans, want GMOs labeled. Most Americans say they would avoid GMOs if labeled. If we need to create a tipping point, we can do it without convincing anyone who's resistant. When you give someone a shopping guide, what do they say? They say, thank you, can I have more? It's giving people what they want. So don't think about trying to convince someone who's a biotech guy as your activism. Your activism is helping people do what they want to do and easing the other guys just out of the picture. Most Americans will never know that they're eating GMOs, and they'll never know we got rid of it for them. We don't need to convince those who don't realize that food relates to health. We just give information to people that want to know. Parents of young kids, healthcare professionals, people who are sick, health-conscious shoppers, religious groups that think GMO means God move over. So, here's some excuses to get involved, and then we'll wrap up. One, this is the time. We have never seen this level of activism with the GMO issue before. This was predicted by supermarket news. They saw the trends. It's being now shown by the Nielsen survey, which shows the fast, rapid adoption of GM-free labels. This is being seen in over 100 events. Because this is news now, every action you take is multiplied. It's multiplied with leverage. Because now people are waking up. It's in the air. 10 years ago, you talk about GMOs. 10 minutes later, you got through to them. Now they're saying, oh yeah, I got 10 things in my email box. What is that about? Oh yeah, okay, what can I do? That's what's happening now. Another excuse. Imagine being woken up in the middle of the night by your great-great-great-grandchild saying, what did you do when you found out that they were taking over the food supply with GMOs? So your excuse can be the future generations. Your excuse can be your current children, and your excuse can be your all living beings. Or even the living beings of the gut bacteria inside you. As we said, the only human feeding study ever published, the only human feeding study ever published shows that part of the gene inserted into soybeans to make them Roundup ready transferred into the DNA of the bacteria inside us.
If anybody's had any turkey, any chicken, any beef that's not been organic, or if any of the food has ingredients that contain corn, canola, soy, or sugar, 90% of that food has been genetically modified that can affect your DNA and has likely been sprayed with Roundup. 90% of our food supply. The reason Occupy Seattle is here is to take back, we are the 99%.
Whether it's a personal issue, whether it's an environmental issue, whether it's a future generation issue, whether it's protecting farmers, whether it's keeping the freedom of the food supply out of the hands of a few multinationals, this is the time to act. So we welcome the Occupy Seattle. We welcome the Occupy Wall Street. We welcome those that wish to deoccupy our food system and stand up for a non-GMO food supply. Oh.
GMO. Hell no, GMO. Hell no, Monsanto. Hell no, Monsanto. Hell no, Monsanto. Hell no, Monsanto. Thank you all very much for coming. We really appreciate it. Please stay in the loop. Come and sign up on our list on the side so you can get involved, and we're glad to welcome you in.
How many people are going to do something? Let's see. One of the simplest things to do is to call your friends over, have a gathering at your home. If you go to the Institute for Responsible Technology, there are downloadable videos there that will help you have a conversation if you need some coaching. It's a fun way. As with all things, everything goes better when we sit and eat with friends. Think about it. Thank you for coming. Many people are consuming this type of genetically manipulated seed and the things that grow therefrom without realizing that this is not being tested. It is a myth that there is in fact testing required by the government, by the USDA or Food and Drug Administration. I'd like to remind people that a very important petition was filed with the Food and Drug Administration by an organization called Center for Food Safety, and it was brought by over 400 organic and non-governmental organizations, including Consumers Union, demanding that we have the rights to have on packaged foods or any foods the information when they contain genetically modified ingredients.
And make sure that policymakers understand the devastating health, environmental, financial, and social consequences of all chemically dependent and concentrated corporate and industrial agriculture.